It is 3 a.m. Maya is awake, heart slamming, stomach knotted, body already in full alarm. She has not thought a single thought yet. Her body is already running a full emergency protocol, and her brain is just now waking up to ask what happened. So who fired first? Most people would say the brain gives the orders. But what if the brain is not the one in charge here? Deep inside, your body runs a nerve so old it predates language, thought, and even the concept of you. It has been running things quietly for 500 million years. It is called the vagus nerve, and it does not wait for permission. It governs your heart rate, your breathing, your digestion, your immune response, even how safe you feel around other people. Most of the signals on the vagus nerve travel upward, from the body to the brain. Your gut is not just digesting food, it is sending reports. Maya did not know any of this at 3 a.m., but her vagus nerve did. This is the story of the nerve that runs your life without ever asking you. That nerve has a name. It is called the vagus nerve, and it is the longest cranial nerve in the human body. Its name comes from the Latin word vagus, which means wanderer. And once you see where it goes, you understand why. It begins in the brainstem, deep inside the skull, in a cluster of neurons called the dorsal motor nucleus. From there, it travels as two separate cables, one on each side of your neck, running just beside your carotid arteries. It passes the larynx and sends branches to your vocal cords. Every time you speak, the vagus nerve is part of that. Then it descends into the chest and wraps around the heart, monitoring every single beat before passing down toward the lungs. It pierces through the diaphragm, that sheet of muscle separating your chest from your belly, and enters the abdomen. It touches the stomach, the liver, the pancreas, the kidneys, and the intestines. One nerve, nearly every organ in your body. Now here is where everything you think you know flips upside down. Most people assume the vagus nerve is a command line. Brain talks, body listens. But the signal flows the other direction far more often. About 80% of vagal fibers are afferent. That means they carry information from the body up to the brain, not down. Your gut, your heart, your lungs are not waiting for orders. They are constantly filing reports, sending data upward every single second. So when you get a gut feeling, that is not a metaphor. That is a literal, neurological signal traveling this wire straight to your brain. Butterflies before a big moment. Tightness in the chest when something feels wrong. Your body detected the threat first and told the brain about it. The body is not reacting to what the brain decided. The brain is reacting to what the body already sensed. That is a very different story. Your body knows the emotional weather before your conscious mind does. The vagus nerve is how it whispers that forecast upward. And nowhere is that whisper louder than in your heart. The vagus nerve reaches down into your chest and acts as a direct brake on your heartbeat. Deep inside your heart sits a cluster of cells called the sinoatrial node. It is the natural pacemaker, the spark that starts every single beat. When the vagus nerve fires, it releases a chemical called acetylcholine directly onto that node. The node slows down, your heart rate drops, you feel calmer. But here is what makes the vagus nerve remarkable. It does not hold your heart rate at one fixed speed. It constantly adjusts, loosening and tightening that brake moment by moment. Scientists can measure that variation. They call it heart rate variability, or HRV. And HRV is essentially the fingerprint of your vagal tone, a live readout of how active and responsive your vagus nerve is. Low HRV means the brake is sluggish. The heart runs less flexibly. Researchers have linked chronically low vagal tone to heart disease, depression, and a much harder time recovering from stress. We know all of this partly because of one strange night in 1921. A German pharmacologist named Otto Loewy had a dream, literally woke up, and ran to his lab. He scribbled the experiment down, ran to his lab, and proved that nerves talk with chemicals. That discovery unlocked everything we are about to see. Now we descend. Below the brain, below the chest, down into the gut. This is where the vagus nerve does some of its strangest work. The gut wall is packed with over 100 million neurons. Scientists call this network the enteric nervous system, the second brain. The vagus nerve sends sensory endings deep into this tissue. They are constantly sampling nutrient levels, inflammation, immune activity, the microbiome. Here is the number that stops most people cold. Over 90% of the body's serotonin is made right here in the gut, not in the brain. The vagus nerve is the primary cable carrying that chemical intelligence upward. Mood, appetite, motivation. The gut is sending the memo and the brain is reading it. But when the gut becomes inflamed, the signal degrades. Inflammatory chemicals corrupt the message, and the brain receives noise instead of information. This is not a metaphor. Gut inflammation has been linked directly to depression, brain fog, and memory disruption. The bottom shapes the top. And if the gut talks to the brain, the same nerve is also listening for something else entirely, something that changed medicine forever. In 1998, a neurosurgeon named Kevin Tracy was running an experiment with an anti-inflammatory drug. What he found instead rewrote how we understand the immune system. Tracy injected an anti-inflammatory compound directly into the brain of a rat. Somehow, inflammation in the rat's entire body dropped, not just locally, everywhere. The brain had signaled the body to stand down, and the highway it used was the vagus nerve. This was the cholinergic anti-inflammatory pathway. Here is how it works. Immune cells in the body detect inflammation and send a signal up the vagus nerve. The brain receives it, then fires back down a command to suppress the immune response. The final stop on that return signal is the spleen. The vagus nerve tells the spleen to release acetylcholine, a molecule that silences inflammatory immune cells called macrophages. This is a reflex loop. Detect, signal, respond. The nervous system is not just watching inflammation. It is actively governing it, the way a thermostat governs temperature. Tracy realized this reflex could be hijacked for medicine. Stimulate the vagus nerve electrically and you could dial down inflammation in rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's disease, even septic shock, without a single drug. But Tracy's discovery was only one piece of a much larger puzzle. Around the same time, a neuroscientist named Stephen Porges was asking a completely different question about the vagus nerve. Porges wanted to know why. The vagus nerve sometimes calms us down and other times seems to do the opposite. Why do some people freeze completely under stress while others stay connected? In 1994, he published what he called polyvagal theory. The core insight was stunning. The vagus nerve is not one system. It has two evolutionarily distinct branches that do very different things. The first branch is ancient. We are talking 500 million years old. Porges called it the dorsal vagal pathway, and it runs straight down into your gut and organs. When this ancient pathway activates under extreme threat, it does not fight and it does not run. It shuts everything down. Heart rate drops. The body goes limp. Consciousness dims. This is the freeze response. Think of a possum playing dead or a gazelle going limp in a lion's jaws. This is biology's last resort, when escape is impossible, collapse as survival. The second branch is far younger. Porges called it the ventral vagal pathway, and it is uniquely mammalian. It connects to the muscles of your face, your voice, and your middle ear. This pathway is your social engagement system. When it is online, you can read faces, modulate your voice, and feel genuinely safe with another person. It is the biological foundation of human connection. Trauma and chronic stress can lock people inside the older defensive circuits, dimming the ventral pathway entirely. This is why trauma survivors often feel numb, disconnected, or unable to feel safe even when danger is gone. But what if you could reach into that locked circuit and manually flip the switch? That is exactly what researchers began asking decades ago. The answer came in the form of a small implanted device, a pulse generator placed under the skin of the chest, wired directly to the vagus nerve in the neck. The FDA approved vagus nerve stimulation for epilepsy in 1997, then for treatment-resistant depression in 2005. Suddenly, the nerve was not just biology, it was medicine. Then came 2025. A landmark study paired vagus nerve stimulation with prolonged exposure therapy for PTSD patients who had failed every other treatment. The results were staggering. All 9 treatment-resistant patients lost their PTSD diagnosis entirely after just 12 sessions. Every single one. The theory is that VNS during therapy forces the brain to stay open, to process the traumatic memory instead of shutting down. The nerve holds the door ajar. But implanted devices require surgery. So scientists began asking whether they could reach the vagus nerve without going under the knife at all. It turns out the vagus nerve surfaces on the skin of the outer ear. A tiny patch of the ear is one of the only places you can reach it from the outside. Transcutaneous devices, small wearable clips placed on the ear, are now in clinical trials for rheumatoid arthritis, inflammatory bowel disease, and anxiety. No surgery, no scar. So the technology is moving fast. But you do not need a device or a clinic to begin working with your vagus nerve. The single most evidence-backed everyday tool is slow-paced breathing. Around 5 to 6 full breaths per minute, which is roughly a 5-second inhale and a 5-second exhale. At that rhythm, your heart rate starts to oscillate in sync with your breath. Heart rate variability rises. The vagus nerve is doing more of the driving. Multiple controlled trials show this reduces anxiety, lowers blood pressure, and improves mood. Not after months. Sometimes within a single session. Cold water on the face is another real signal. Splashing cold water activates the dive reflex, which slows your heart rate through a direct vagal response. Humming and singing also stimulate the vagus nerve through the muscles of the throat and larynx. The evidence is modest, but the cost is zero. Cold water on the face activates the dive reflex through the vagus nerve, slowing the heart almost instantly. Simple, accessible, and surprisingly powerful. So, you have more levers than you think. Breath, cold, movement, song. Your nervous system is not a locked room. It has doors. Now step back from all of that and consider the single fact that changes everything. 80% of the signals on the vagus nerve travel upward, from body to brain. Your brain is not issuing orders most of the time. It is reading a report. A continuous, detailed report filed by your organs, your gut, your heart, your immune cells. That means emotions are not purely products of thought. They are the brain's best interpretation of what the body is reporting at any given moment. Your moods, your anxiety, your sense of dread or calm. These are not just mental events. They are the brain narrating the body. Remember Maya at 3 a.m., bolt upright in the dark? Heart pounding, certain something was wrong? That was not irrationality. That was her body filing a report. Her vagus nerve, doing exactly what it has done since before she was born, transmitting data faithfully upward. We traveled from anatomy to heartbeat, from the gut to immunity, From ancient oceans to modern medicine and back to the choices in your everyday morning. And it all comes back to this. One nerve running quietly beneath everything, making you who you are from the inside out, the hidden protagonist. If this changed how you see yourself, subscribe and watch the next episode on interoception, the sixth sense your body uses to talk back.